Hi, my name is Mandolin Royal, and today we're going to be barbecuing some chicken. And we're doing that for the flavor and not the cooking method, and that's because these are heritage birds. These are older than Cornish cross, since Cornish cross are typically processed between 8 and 10 weeks old. They're tender no matter what you do. That's just because of their age. These birds were 18 weeks old, and so we're going to treat them a little bit differently so that we can still have a tender and juicy result, but also have that barbecue flavor. And you can probably liken it to cooking a rack of ribs, to where you wouldn't take a rack of ribs and throw them straight onto the grill. There's usually pre-cooking involved, and that's what we're going to do with these. We're going to do a spatchcock method, but first I'm going to go ahead and do a tenderizing brine solution. So what I'm doing here, it's going to vary between these birds because they're different sizes, and there's going to be a different amount of the baking soda and the kosher salt and the water to accommodate the size. So this bigger one here at 4.5 pounds, we're going to do 6 teaspoons of the baking soda because it's 1 teaspoon per pound. We're going to use 4 tablespoons of kosher salt, and that is for 1 quart of water, which is 4 cups. I've got shrink bags out. They have 2 purposes: to store the bird, but also brine the bird. So it's always handy to have those around. And it's important to note that you want to use the kosher salt because it doesn't leave an extra salty flavor in the meat. If you use regular table salt, it's probably going to bring a saltier result, and I don't want it for the salt flavor. This is all about tenderizing and preserving our juiciness to make sure we have a really good cooked result. We also just want the chicken flavor and the barbecue flavor, so I'm not adding any additional ingredients to this brine. And they need to spend a minimum of 2 hours in the brine soak and not to exceed 24 hours. If you go past that 24-hour mark, you're going to end up with a pretty salty result, and that's never good. So these guys have already been aged. They had 4 days to age before they went in the freezer, and they've had another 2 days to thaw out. And you can tell when they're ready to cook by how loose everything is. If it's really tight, it's not ready yet. You want them to be loosey-goosey. The purpose of the aging is to get them well past that rigor mortis stage in the first 24 hours after processing, and to also help with tenderizing just by time. It's going to have an impact on your texture more so than your flavor. The flavor is coming from the age of the chicken. These guys had ample time to start developing flavor. And that real chickeny flavor doesn't even start to develop until after 12 weeks old. As far as the barbecue goes, it's going to be our final stage. And they're not going to spend long on that barbecue at all. Maybe 12 minutes total. But I'm going to start this morning with getting them into a brine soak. Then I'm going to go off and do all the chores. And when I come back, I'm going to spatchcock them for an even cooked result while keeping them reasonably whole. And then they're going to spend some time in the oven. So more on this in a few after I get them set up into these bags. So I've dumped in the salt and the baking soda for the first bird into the water. And I'm whisking it around to get it all dissolved before I put the chicken in the bag and then pour this over the chicken. And then zip tie it shut to park it in the refrigerator for at least 2 hours. If you put the water in first into the bag and then add your other ingredients, it's just not going to mix as well. So this is an important enough step that I figured it was worth mentioning, even though doing this left-handed is a little tricky. So we've got them spatchcocked, which is split in half. And while we're here, I wanted to show you the inside and their fat development. These are, after all, American breasts, and that fat development with special finishing or without is still worth noting. So this is one that did not get the special finishing. And it looks like I inadvertently cut off this part back when we were processing. But there's still some development up here in between the ribs. And that all melts down for juiciness when you're cooking. And this bird developed a lot more of it because it did receive the special finishing. And this is all going to aid in keeping the bird juicy as it cooks. It did go a little too far with the knife when I was doing the spatchcock, which is basically cutting along the spine. So when we cook them, they're going to be on the pan like this. And it makes a much better and more even cooked result. Go ahead and take that off of there. So these are just about ready to go in the oven. I did rinse them thoroughly when I pulled them out of their brine soak. And then I'm just going to position them to where they're going to cook the most even. When you flatten them out like this, you may need to pump the chest once to get that nice and flat there. So now I'm going to put these into a preheated oven. It's preheated at 350 degrees. And I'm going to get back to you and let you know how long I kept them in there for. What I'm going to be looking for is this skin pulling back off of the leg here. And other indicators of doneness, such as the internal temperature reaching a minimum of 160 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'll take that temperature in the thickest part of the bird. Once we have achieved that temperature, we're going to take them outside and pop them on the grill for a couple minutes to get that flavor in there. But while these are in the oven, I'm going to go ahead and work on some mashed potatoes and some other side items. Keep myself entertained during this part of it. There they are in the oven. I do have them positioned on the same rack, turned sideways, and I'm probably going to have to rotate them and turn them probably about midway through, and I'm going to bank on that being at about the 1 hour to 45 minute mark. I'm anticipating this to be about 2 hours, but we'll see. So I've got my thermometer here, and this is the smaller bird. It has been 1 hour and 45 minutes, and I like the way it is pulled up on the leg bone there. I like coloring. So I think we are just about there. Oh yeah, we're totally there. We're pushing 170. So this one is definitely done and grill ready for that final flavoring. I'm going to pull the other one out and check its temperature. It's in a deeper pan and it was a bigger bird. So we'll find out if it is also ready or not. And my husband is outside getting the coals ready on our little barbecue grill. We don't use propane, we use charcoal because we do want the maximum benefit of that flavor profile. So I'm going to go ahead and check the other bird and get them ready, and then check to see that the grill is ready so that we can finally get to some dinner. Here's the second bird. Temperature wise, it was ready for the grill as well. And the other indicators of doneness is you can see the skin. It's pretty crispy. We didn't cover these. The darker coloration here on the wingtips that no one's gonna eat. That's in there. And here's how the skin pulled up that leg bone. So both of these are ready. I'm gonna go check in and see how it's going on the grill. We're outside getting ready to put these birds on the grill, and I wanted to show you something, because remember how I said that this one, the bigger one, had the special finishing, the other one did not, but that fat that was up in the rib cage, when these birds were cooked this way, let me see if it shows this time. See that juice coming out of there? Still on the top of the bird after being cooked in the oven. That's going to be very, very important for this next step. See all that juice? There was no basting involved here. Everything that was in there is still in there. And that's going to translate to our cooking juiciness for the final product, as well as end flavor. So we're going to go ahead and double check the coals, make sure they're good to go, get these birds on here so they can pick up that barbecue flavor that we're after. We're outside ready to put these on the grill. My husband's going to grab this guy right by the legs because they're not so overdone that they fall apart. So he's going to go ahead and grab it and move it over to the grill just like that. Notice the grip there between the fingers. And then we're going to put the lid on and let them absorb some of this barbecue flavor. We're going to start the clock on how long they're here because they've already been cooked to doneness without that falling apart stage. Our grill is pretty basic. It's just a kettle grill, no frills, no special features, charcoal inside. We're going to let them do their thing. So we already flipped over the first bird that hit the grill, and that was the smaller one. Now we're gonna flip over the larger bird, and we're looking for that charry flavor. And the benefit of having the special finishing, as well as the other one who did put up respectable fat, is it's melting down and adding juice. Go ahead and put the lid on. It's adding juice in there to prevent the drying out. The more fat you have, the more it's going to be a self-basting bird. Without it, it can dry out so easy. So you really want to refine your methodology to where you do have a pretty good fat gain, because it helps you through all of the various cooking methods that you can use these birds for. Alright, so we flipped the birds one time. We flipped them the first time when we got a little bit of charring action going on the rib side. Now, when we take this lid off, we're going to be looking for a little bit of charriness on the breast side. This first one here is our little one. We're going to turn it over and get a look. Oh yeah, that's ready. So that one can go ahead and head to a platter. It's going to have the flavor we're looking for. The other one, we're going to turn it. It seemed to have caught up based on the position of the coals and how we had the airflow on the bottom and the airflow on the top. I think this one needs a couple more minutes, but it is just about there. Well, he might do a little tester. It's pretty well done, but I might want it more charry. Alright, that's his piece. He's claimed it. He does love the legs and the dark meat. I am partial to the front of the bird and the breast meat. And this is the one that got the special finishing. And we're going to be competing over the different pieces of this bird. Look at that. That's looking pretty good. Alright, so it's time to take the lid off and get to my part of the bird and that thigh he pulled off for himself later. It's got some grill marks on it. Yeah, that looks right. That looks folly party. So we'll go ahead and move that over to the platter. Nice. So now it's time to get them taken inside. If I find anything worth noting, I will go ahead and tack that on to the end of this video. But you can see that wing twisted right off of there. That other wing, it's hot. But it's coming right off, and that's what we want. Those legs just flipped off the bird. Easy peasy. It's raining now. We've got some crap weather coming on the horizon. You see it in there with the dark clouds. So we're gonna head inside and go eat. All right, so we're back in the house, away from the rain. That's a relief. So this one back here was our bigger bird that had received the special finishing. This one closer to me is the smaller bird that had not received the special finishing. And we're going to go ahead and start breaking into these. And you may have seen us already have some pieces going on, especially since my husband was pulling apart his drumsticks, and that is his preferred part of the bird. My favorite part is the front of the bird. I don't always go for the little pieces on the wing meat, but sometimes I do, and I think I'm going to go ahead and grab this little one. We did cook these with the rib side down initially, and all of that fat that had been here, with it being flipped over, that allowed those juices to permeate through the rest of the bird during the cooking process. Oh man, that little bite had flavor. Can I grab that?
Do whatever you need to.
Oh man, it falls off. Perfect. Oh, that's got the flavor. Oh man, that's exactly what I was after in doing this. Oh, that turned out great. You should grab a piece if you get a chance. It didn't dry out. It didn't do anything funky while we were going through this cooking process. It is tender. It is juicy. And it is everything I was hoping for. So we're going to go ahead and keep breaking these apart, getting them down into our servings for today, as well as our leftovers for tomorrow, and potentially the day after that, but probably not. But this has, once again, turned out to be some really good chicken. We bred it, we hatched it, we grew it, we processed it, and here we are for dinner today. Everything done on the homestead. Perfect. It's so good. So my husband brought up a very valid point on reminding me of the difference in how you have to treat the bird to get the best result. And this is the absolute best chicken we've had in a long time. Just because of how we treated it today, with the brine soak for tenderizing, the slow bake in the oven, and then the finish on the grill, we have already obliterated this chicken. There's more to eat there for sure, but we have been munching away before we have even built our plates. And it is diggity chicken. That was chicken that had time to grow, time to develop flavor. But I want to get back onto the point of recognizing doneness. So he's going to work through this second chicken and just see how easily it came apart there. Go ahead and show us some more on how everything just comes apart. That's the breast meat. Everything just comes apart. And if it's a piece you don't eat, go ahead and set it aside. And maybe you come off of it with some tidbits for the dogs. Just give me a piece. Not so small. Man, we're going to be full before we even hit the dinner table with this.
But the biggest complaint is basically...
Yeah, so if you have complaints on the texture of it, you might experience an adjustment period going from the baby-sized Cornish crossbirds with their mushy texture and then going into the longer grown, slower cooked birds that also have to have a different cooking parameter. So, for example, if you look up a recipe for roasting chicken, cooking chicken, whatever, if it says something above 400 degrees, that's wrong for this type of bird. That is for modern commercial broiler birds. If your cook temperature is too high and too fast, you are not going to have a good result. I wish I could say it was different and you could just Google a recipe and be done with it. But honestly, it's got to be with patience, low and slow. Let it do what it needs to do for the age of bird. That way you can avoid disappointment and you can go ahead and venture into culinary finesse. And you can't do that rushed. You can't use a high temperature. You can't use a short amount of time. So we're going to keep blowing through this chicken and hopefully maybe having a sit-down meal. Probably not. We're going to be full. This is some dang good chicken because we took our time with it. We let it go through the processes that it needed to go through. And man, this flavor. So more on this later as we show you how to cook with the heritage type birds that need that extra level of patience to reach those parameters of much richer flavor that are also healthy, and you can do it at home. We didn't have to go buy these birds. We bred it, we raised it, we processed it. Here we are cooking it all on the farm